No one is better than you. Listen to me very closely because this is the uncomfortable truth that society has conditioned you to ignore. Absolutely no one walking this earth is fundamentally better, smarter, or more deserving of a massive life than you are. Yet, right now, you are probably living a fraction of the life you could be living. Why? Because somewhere along the line, you bought into the biggest lie ever sold about confidence. You were told that confidence is some kind of magical reward that arrives only after you have achieved success, built the bank account, or received the world's applause. You have been waiting for permission to feel powerful. You have been waiting to step into a room and finally feel like you belong, hoping that one day you will suddenly wake up confident, disciplined, and ready to take control of your life. But strength and confidence do not arrive like a miracle. They are not gifts bestowed upon a lucky few. The truth most people never fully confront is simple. You are not less than anyone, not in intelligence, not in worth, and definitely not in the ability to build something extraordinary with your life. But comparison, self-doubt, past mistakes, and criticism have slowly trained you to live far beneath your own power. You have learned to measure your value through the opinions of people who cannot even see your future. Every single time you accepted that smaller, safer version of yourself, you took a step further away from the person you were meant to become. You learned to question yourself before taking action, to shrink your presence, to walk into a room with your shoulders slumped as if you are apologizing for taking up space. Today, that pattern completely ends. I need you to stop trying to just be more confident and start making a radical identity shift. You must act as if you are the best. Let me be perfectly clear. This is not about arrogance, delusion, or walking around with a toxic ego. It is not about looking down on others. It is about deep, stoic discipline and profound self-respect. It is the absolute refusal to betray your own potential by playing small. You cannot act like the greatest version of yourself while still thinking like the weakest version. If your identity is still tied to past failures, the embarrassment of a mistake you made years ago, or the labels that small-minded people placed on you, every step forward is going to feel like dragging 100-pound weight. Your mind will keep pulling you back toward the familiar version of yourself that feels safe but small. Real transformation never begins with results. It begins with your identity. Outcomes do not create your identity. Your identity creates your outcomes. A strong identity produces strong actions, and strong actions produce strong results. When your identity is fragile, every single challenge shakes you. But when your identity is solid, those challenges just become part of your growth. When you wait for the world to validate you before you believe in yourself, you are basically waiting for a harvest before you even plant the seed. It is time to stop waiting for external proof. You must assume the identity of the person who has already won. Act from the mindset of someone who commands respect, not because you have proven everything to the world yet, but because you absolutely refuse to shrink yourself anymore. The way you show up in the world sends a massive message long before you say a single word. Most people completely underestimate how strongly their physical presence influences the way others respond to them. Think about how you have been operating. Do you walk into rooms with hesitation, with your shoulders slightly lowered, your voice uncertain, and your energy quiet? You act as if you are asking the world for permission to exist. When you present yourself this way, the world simply reflects that uncertainty right back to you. People overlook you, they interrupt you, or they assume you have little to offer. This does not happen because you lack intelligence or ability. It happens because your presence signals deep doubt before your actions even have a chance to speak for themselves. You have been waiting to be acknowledged before you decide to contribute. You wait to be asked before you start speaking. And you wait for outside validation before you offer any value. But true leaders do not wait for permission to participate in their own lives. They create momentum by acting first. They greet others first. They ask thoughtful questions first, and they share ideas without hesitation. You must understand that your body plays a powerful role in shaping your internal mental state. The way you stand, the way you breathe, and the way you move all send direct signals to your nervous system. When your physical posture collapses, your mind often follows immediately with uncertainty and fear. But when you make the deliberate decision to stand tall, open your chest, and lift your head slightly, your body communicates pure stability and control. Even a few minutes of intentional posture can completely shift your mental state because your brain interprets these physical signals as readiness. Instead of shrinking away, you begin expanding into the space around you. Notice how you move. People who feel uncertain tend to move quickly or nervously. Their gestures are scattered, their steps are rushed, and their attention is constantly shifting. But someone who carries a strong, stoic presence moves entirely differently. Their movements are calm, deliberate, and entirely controlled. They do not rush their actions because they are not trying to escape the attention of others. They fully accept the space they occupy and they use it with clear intention. This quiet, grounded control naturally draws immense respect from everyone around them. Your energy is contagious in every single environment you enter. If you walk into a room carrying anxiety and self-doubt, that tension quietly spreads to everyone else. But when you enter with calm focus and grounded confidence, others immediately begin responding to that undeniable stability. You hold yourself back because you fear judgment, imagining that everyone is constantly analyzing your behavior and waiting for you to make a mistake. In reality, most people are far more focused on their own personal insecurities than they are on evaluating yours. When you finally release the desperate fear of being perfectly approved by everyone else, you regain complete freedom in how you express yourself. Your responsibility is not to satisfy every opinion in the room. Your responsibility is to strictly represent the high standards you have chosen for your own life. Consistency is exactly what transforms this new presence into a permanent identity. Acting confident one single time does not create lasting change. But when you repeatedly show up with intentional posture, controlled movement, and proactive behavior, these actions begin to feel entirely natural. What once required massive effort simply becomes your baseline way of operating. The reason this physical and mental shift is so critical is because you have been operating under the ultimate illusion of success. Society teaches you a completely backward formula. You are taught that you must first achieve massive results, and then, as a reward for those results, you are finally allowed to adopt the identity of a confident and successful person. You think you need the promotion, the substantial bank account, or the perfect relationship before you can look in the mirror and boldly say that you are valuable. But this is a complete trap. Outcomes do not create your identity. Your identity creates your outcomes. This is the exact secret that separates the weak from the truly powerful. A strong identity produces strong actions, and strong actions produce strong results. When your identity is fragile and heavily dependent on external validation, every single challenge, every negative comment, and every small failure completely shakes your foundation. But when your identity is deeply solid, those same challenges simply become necessary parts of your personal growth. You cannot possibly act like the absolute best while continuing to think like the weakest version of yourself. If your internal narrative is still tied to old failures, the deep embarrassment of a mistake you made years ago, or the limitations that small-minded people placed on you, every step forward is going to feel like dragging a heavy weight. Your mind will constantly try to pull you back toward the familiar version of yourself, a version that feels comfortable but keeps you playing incredibly small. This is exactly why you must aggressively adopt a new, uncompromising rule for your life. You must act as if you are the best right now. You absolutely cannot wait for the evidence to arrive before you decide to believe in your own power. You must build that evidence yourself by acting from a place of absolute certainty. Strength is not something you simply stumble into by accident. It is something you build deliberately, decision by decision, habit by habit, day by day. When you wake up each morning, you cannot let your behavior be dictated by how you happen to feel. Human feelings are incredibly unreliable. Motivation constantly rises and falls depending on circumstances. But a Stoic identity remains completely stable in the face of chaos. Instead of asking yourself what you casually feel like doing today, you must start asking yourself what specific action perfectly aligns with the person you are actively becoming. This single, profound mental shift moves your focus entirely away from temporary emotions and locks it directly onto long-term character building. You must aggressively assume the role of the person who has already won the war in their mind. You make your daily decisions not from where you currently are, but from the exact place you are going. You show up to your work, you approach your conversations, and you execute your private habits with the exact same standard as someone who has already achieved greatness. Now, I know exactly what your mind might be telling you right now. You might be thinking that walking into a room and acting as if you are the absolute best is crossing the line into arrogance. Society has severely blurred the line between healthy self-respect and toxic ego. We have been conditioned to believe that being humble means shrinking ourselves, staying quiet, taking up less space, and letting other people dictate our value. But let me stop you right there and completely clarify this distinction, because this is the crucial Stoic twist that will keep you grounded. Showing up with the energy of the absolute best is not arrogance. Arrogance is nothing but a deep, unhealed insecurity, disguised as loud confidence. It is the constant, desperate need to prove that you are superior to everyone else by pushing them down. What we are talking about right now is alignment. It is profound mental discipline. It is the uncompromising decision to act from the exact version of yourself you are actively becoming, rather than the fears and limitations that used to completely control you. When you decide to act like the greatest version of yourself, you are not being delusional. You are not practicing some form of toxic positivity or feeding a narcissistic ego. You are simply practicing the highest level of self-respect. You are finally recognizing that you have the absolute right to fully occupy the space of your own life without apology. Think about it very deeply. When you shrink yourself, you are not actually serving the world. You are simply betraying your own massive potential. Dimming your light so that other people do not have to squint does not make you a noble person. It makes you a prisoner of their comfort zones. True Stoic confidence does not demand attention. It does not need to walk into a room, raise its voice, and aggressively announce how great it is. It is incredibly quiet. It is a steady, internal fortress built on the standards you refuse to compromise. Your standards define what you tolerate from yourself and what you completely refuse to accept from your environment. A strong identity refuses to shrink down to accommodate weak habits or the insecurities of others. When you carry yourself with this grounded, stoic certainty, people do not actually feel threatened. They feel secure around you because your energy is entirely stable. You are no longer desperately scanning the room, trying to figure out if people approve of your existence. You simply do not care if they judge you because your fundamental self-worth is no longer on the table for public negotiation. This is the ultimate boundary you must set. You must treat yourself with such a high, unwavering level of respect that the world around you simply has no other choice but to adjust and mirror that exact same standard back to you. Arrogance will always require an audience to applaud it, but this real, unshakable confidence only requires one single thing: your own permission to finally step into your full power and stop apologizing for who you are. But how do you actually convince your mind that this new identity is entirely real? You cannot simply stand in front of a mirror and lie to yourself. Your brain is entirely too smart to believe empty words. If your internal dialogue tells you that you are a powerful, disciplined person, but your daily actions reflect someone who constantly procrastinates, avoids discomfort, and breaks promises, your mind will immediately reject the new identity. Real confidence is not built through empty affirmations or loud motivation. Real, unshakable confidence is built through the relentless collection of undeniable evidence. Confidence grows only when your mind finally begins to trust your own actions. Every single day, you are presented with a series of opportunities to collect small, irrefutable pieces of proof that you are exactly who you claim to be. A single completed task that you desperately wanted to avoid. A difficult conversation handled with stoic courage, or a strict commitment to wake up at the exact minute you promised yourself. These are not just isolated events in your schedule. They are the psychological evidence that you are someone who executes. Most people completely overlook these small daily victories because they are obsessively waiting for a massive, life-changing moment to suddenly make them feel confident. They are waiting for the world to hand them an award or a promotion before they decide to believe in their own value, which is exactly like waiting for a harvest before you have even planted the seed. But these tiny, disciplined decisions quietly accumulate inside your mind. Over time, your brain begins to recognize a completely new pattern. It realizes that you are no longer the person who shrinks away when things get difficult. You are no longer someone who negotiates with their own standards just to seek temporary comfort. You become someone who follows through with absolute certainty. When you repeatedly match your actions to your commitments, you build a massive fortress of self-trust. And self-trust is the absolute foundation of Stoic strength. Think deeply about the heavy weight of the promises you have broken to yourself in the past. Every single time you said you were going to start that demanding project, go for that 5-mile run, or finally set a firm boundary with a toxic person, and then you quietly backed down. You taught your mind that your word means absolutely nothing. You unconsciously trained your brain to expect failure. Now, you must aggressively reverse that entire process. You must build a track record of keeping your word to yourself that is so solid. Your brain has no other choice but to believe that you are truly unstoppable. You do not need the world to offer you validation. You simply need to show up when you promised you would show up, especially on the days when no one is watching and your emotional motivation is entirely gone. That is the exact moment when the identity shift permanently locks in. You finally become a person who does not just talk about change, but someone who proves it through the quiet, relentless execution of your daily standards. You have started building that undeniable evidence through your daily execution, but there is a massive trap that destroys most people right at this exact stage. They think that becoming the strongest version of themselves is all about adding things to their life. They try to add new complex routines, read dozens of new books, and pile on massive ambitious goals, completely ignoring the things that are actively draining their power. But true Stoic strength is not just about what you aggressively add to your life. It is about what you ruthlessly remove. Your mind is a fortress, and right now, you might be leaving the gates wide open for enemies to walk right in. If you want to permanently lock in this new identity, you have to initiate a massive internal purge. Confidence is incredibly sensitive to what you tolerate. Every single thought you repeatedly accept, every weak habit you allow to remain, and every person you constantly surround yourself with sends a direct psychological signal to your brain about how much you actually value yourself. If you are acting like a powerful person in the morning, but then you spend your afternoon sitting around people who constantly complain, spread doubt, and drag their feet, your mind gets entirely confused. It sees the glaring contradiction. It realizes you are still tolerating environments that force you to shrink. You have to evaluate the people around you with brutal honesty. This is not about believing you are superior to them, and it is definitely not about being arrogant or cruel. This is about deep alignment and fiercely protecting your mental space. Some individuals genuinely want to see you grow, but others are deeply comfortable with the old, insecure version of you because it does not challenge their own lack of ambition. When you start carrying yourself with undeniable certainty, it will make them extremely uncomfortable. and they will subtly try to pull you back down into the familiar noise. You absolutely must not let them. Protecting your mindset is not selfish. It is an absolute requirement for survival. However, the most dangerous enemy is not the people around you. It is the noise inside your own head. Even if you isolate yourself in a completely quiet room, your mind can still loudly replay every single mistake you have ever made. You would never allow a stranger to walk into your house and speak to you the way you routinely speak to yourself. You replay past failures, you heavily criticize your own abilities, and you constantly remind yourself that you are not ready yet. That destructive internal dialogue is quietly bleeding your new confidence dry. You have to step up as the undisputed leader of your own mind. When that negative voice tries to convince you that you are weak or that you are going to fail again, you cannot just passively listen to it. You must actively interrupt it. You must acknowledge the thought, and then immediately replace it with a deliberate, commanding direction that aligns entirely with the unstoppable person you are actively becoming. Once you have cleared out the mental noise and removed the toxic habits that were draining your power, you are going to enter what is undeniably the most brutal phase of this entire transformation. This is what I call the invisible season. It is not the beginning, when your motivation is sky high and every new habit feels exciting. And it is certainly not the end, when your success is loud and everyone is finally clapping for you. The invisible season is the quiet, exhausting middle ground where you are putting in the work, waking up early, maintaining strict discipline, and yet, absolutely nothing in your external reality seems to be changing. You are sweating, you are executing, but the results are completely invisible. This is the exact moment where 99% of people break. They look around and see others moving faster, driving better cars, getting promoted, or receiving massive recognition while they are still grinding away in the shadows. The human mind is wired to crave immediate evidence. We want tangible proof that our effort is actually working. When that proof does not arrive after a few weeks or months, a dangerous whisper begins to echo in your head, telling you that maybe your path is wrong. Maybe you are not cut out for this. And maybe you should just go back to being the comfortable, smaller version of yourself. But you must understand this fundamental Stoic truth. Real transformation almost always happens entirely beneath the surface, long before it becomes visible to anyone else. Think about a massive oak tree. Before it ever rises 100 feet into the air to dominate the landscape, its roots must spend months pushing deep into the cold, dark soil, establishing an unshakable foundation. If you dig up the seed every few days just to see if it is growing, you will completely destroy it. Your identity works the exact same way. During the invisible season, your progress is not measured by the numbers in your bank account or the applause of the crowd. It is measured by the sheer quality of your daily decisions. Did you show up when you promised yourself you would? Did you hold your boundaries? Did you execute your plan on a cold morning when you were exhausted and absolutely no one was watching? Those quiet, unseen victories are exactly where your new identity locks into place. Do not fall into the trap of restarting new strategies or chasing new trends just because you feel impatient. Trusting the process means staying fiercely loyal to your path long enough for the results to finally catch up with your effort. You must stop waiting for the world to validate you and realize that the discipline you practice today is actively forging the person who will eventually command the room. You are not invisible. You are simply under construction. And the foundation you are building right now in the dark will become the exact reason you remain completely untouchable in the light. Surviving the invisible season will eventually bring you to the ultimate test of your new identity. There will be days when you feel entirely exhausted, discouraged, and desperately tempted to simply stop pushing forward. These are the exact moments that separate the people who only talk about transformation from the ones who actually achieve it. Anyone can work hard when their motivation is high and the process feels exciting. But the people who truly build an untouchable life are the ones who continue acting when their own emotions are screaming at them to quit. When the thought of surrendering appears, your mind will instantly begin offering excuses that sound incredibly reasonable. It will tell you that you deserve a break, that you have already run 3 miles and do not need to finish the 4th, or that waiting until tomorrow will make the work feel easier. These thoughts are dangerously persuasive because they promise immediate relief from your discomfort. But you must understand that the moment you listen to them, you reinforce the exact same habit of retreating that kept you small in the past. To completely shatter this pattern, you must commit to a powerful Stoic weapon known as the one more principle. When your mind strongly urges you to stop, you must consciously decide to execute just one more step. You do 1 more minute of intense focus, 1 more repetition in your workout, 1 more page of writing, or 1 more attempt at solving the massive problem sitting right in front of you. These small, deliberate acts of persistence might appear insignificant in the moment, but they create a profound psychological shift. They violently interrupt your old programming. By pushing through the resistance, you actively teach your brain that discomfort is no longer a signal to quit. It is simply the required cost of your growth. Every single time you continue moving forward despite the heavy resistance, you are pouring concrete into the foundation of your new identity. Your mind begins to recognize that you are entirely capable of pushing far beyond your temporary physical and mental fatigue. Over time, this relentless pattern becomes completely automatic. Instead of avoiding difficult situations, you start actively moving toward them because you finally understand that those exact moments of immense pressure are forging the strongest version of yourself. You no longer view yourself as someone waiting for the perfect conditions to begin. You see yourself as the undeniable force that creates momentum purely through disciplined action. This level of extreme responsibility stops feeling like a heavy burden and immediately becomes your greatest source of ultimate freedom. When you adopt this uncompromising mindset, every obstacle becomes an opportunity to prove your character, and you realize that the discomfort you feel today is exactly what makes you completely unshakable tomorrow. When you consistently push through that resistance day after day, something profound begins to shift in your external reality, and you finally enter what can only be described as an untouchable state. Think back to the exact place where this journey started. Remember the person who used to walk into a room hoping to be noticed, but desperately afraid of being judged. The person who carried the heavy weight of past failures, who instinctively shrunk their physical presence, and who waited for the world to hand them a permission slip to finally feel valuable. That old version of you no longer exists. Through the quiet and relentless discipline of the invisible season, and the sheer refusal to surrender when your own mind begged you to stop, you have completely rewritten your internal foundation. Now, your physical presence, your voice, and your mindset are entirely aligned with your new identity. You no longer walk into a room frantically scanning the faces of others to figure out if they approve of you. You belong exactly where you stand because you have paid the ultimate price in the dark to earn that space in the light. When you carry yourself with this grounded and unshakable certainty, you stop chasing recognition entirely. And here is the ultimate paradox of real confidence. The absolute second you stop needing the outside world to validate your existence, the world naturally begins to adjust and mirror your exact standards back to you. People feel your steady calm long before they even analyze it. They immediately notice the deliberate control in your movements, the absolute clarity in your spoken words, and the heavy weight of your silent presence. Massive opportunities begin gravitating toward you, not because you are aggressively demanding attention or forcing your way to the front, but because your quiet energy clearly signals that you are fully prepared to handle extreme responsibility. You are no longer reacting to the daily noise, the projected doubts, or the chaotic opinions of people who are not going where you are going. You have built a mental fortress so incredibly solid that external criticism simply bounces off the walls. You must always remember the Stoic twist that keeps this power grounded. This is never about believing you are fundamentally superior to anyone else walking this earth. It is about the absolute refusal to ever live as a fraction of your true potential again. You have completely mastered the uncomfortable truth. Real confidence was never a magical reward waiting at the finish line. It was the daily decision to act as if you were the absolute best, long before you had any tangible evidence to prove it to the world. You built the evidence yourself. You survived the intense resistance. You deliberately forged the identity. Now, you hold the ultimate quiet power. You do not need to loudly announce your strength because your mere presence commands respect without trying. You are in complete control of your mind, entirely aligned with your future, and finally living the massive life you always deserved, completely and utterly untouchable. The future belongs entirely to those who trust their path long enough to walk it. You no longer have the luxury of playing small or waiting for the world to give you permission. Your identity creates your outcomes. So make the uncompromising decision today to act as if you are the absolute best. And let your relentless daily execution build the undeniable evidence. If you are finally ready to master your mind, survive the invisible season, and claim your untouchable life. Hit the subscribe button right now to join our community of disciplined builders. Drop a comment below saying I am untouchable to permanently lock in this powerful new identity. And share this message with someone who needs to wake up and hear this uncomfortable truth today. See you next video.